Hi, I'm Andrew Corbett. I pastor a church, but my main responsibility is this book, believe it or not. This is the Bible, the Christian Bible. It's comprised of two covenants, an Old Covenant and New Covenant, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a moment. If you've never read the Bible and you want just a quick overview of what it says, maybe you're exploring your own spirituality, I want to at least be that voice in your head that gives you just a general picture of what the Bible has to say. And then after we're done with these videos, which hopefully someone will watch with you, you can make up your own mind whether you find this to be credible or not. There's people who have not believed this, not been acquainted with this. Books have been written by people who have discovered the truth of this. This one I recommend. It's The Book That Made Your World by Vishal Mangalwadi. It's a brilliant book, and he talks about how this book, the Bible, the Christian Bible, has actually shaped Western values and Western civilization. So that's a great book. I really recommend it if you want to go a little bit deeper. For many people, this is a mysterious book. They might open it up randomly and have a look at it, and it makes no sense. It's like, as the way I picture it, it's kind of like picking up one piece of a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and going, oh, I got no clue. I have no idea what this is about. And so what I want to do is maybe help you to get a clearer picture of the box lid before you open up and have a look at an individual piece of the puzzle. I think the Bible and its message can be boiled down to 8 great stories. They're not just great stories, they're true stories. This might surprise someone who's unacquainted with the Christian Bible, that it actually is a story. It's a story. Now, that might seem like, well, aren't all holy books a story? And the answer is no, they're not. The Quran is divided into surahs, and there's the Medina section and the Mecca section, and they're kind of mixed up based on the size of the surah, the chapter. But it's not a story. The hadiths tell some of the story behind it. The Bhagavad Gita in Hinduism is not really a story either. We have other writings in other religions. They're not really a story. This is actually a story. And so I want to kind of introduce it to you, and I've brought this along here. Imagine if it was as easy to understand as some of the adventure stories that we read in a book that might look like this. And so I want to tell you a little bit about the Bible so you can grasp it a little bit clearer, I hope, with these relatively short videos. The word Bible comes from a Greek word meaning books, biblos, books. And so it is actually, biblos is the singular, because it's actually one single story, and it's translated in English as the word Bible. It's comprised of actually 66 books. They each have a separate name, and those 66 books all tell the one story. Those 66 books in here were written over about a period of 1,500 years by around about 40 different authors or so. Most of these authors never met each other, and yet they describe themselves being given a divine message, which they describe as a spiritual experience, which they wrote. And amazingly, their stories correspond. Not only do they correspond, they fit like jigsaw pieces into the one picture. So I think that's pretty amazing. We might think, how can this be one story? Well, it actually is, and when you look at just a couple of pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, it might not seem like that. But when you step back and have a look at the completed picture, the whole box lid, it becomes apparent that we're dealing with one picture. Now, the Bible, if you've ever picked it up and just randomly looked at it, and it seems in that section a bit obscure, the Bible actually tells us that it is a little bit obscure, and it's obscure for a reason. And we're going to talk about that reason as we go through and have a look at these 8 great stories. And it's kind of a way that the Bible itself presents itself as not to be trivialized with. It's not to be seen as an ordinary book. It's definitely not an ordinary book. And as Vishal Mangawadi explains in his book, The Book That Made Your World, it's a book that's actually transformed not just lives, but entire nations and arguably civilizations. So it's quite amazing. The Bible is a coherent story. It's got one theme, it's got one plot, it's got a continuous storyline that runs through it, it's got a hero, and then it's got instructions for the reader on how to live well based on this story. There were times when even the early Christians, as they looked at the Bible itself, they didn't understand it. In fact, some of the people that God used to write his story, and he's ultimately the author, they wrote what they felt they were inspired to write, looked back at it and said, I don't quite understand what you're telling me to write. And it was only with the hindsight of years that it becomes clear exactly what they were writing about. Now, to introduce you to the Bible as a story, you would appreciate that every story essentially has three components. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And I want to start right at the beginning. The very first book in the Christian Bible is called Genesis. The word Genesis actually means origin or beginning. It was this beginning that the story starts for us. Later on, the Bible will go back to a time before the beginning, at least in our dimension, a time in another dimension where God dwells, and he'll talk about that as well. But in the very beginning, we are told that God created a heavenly family of creatures that we might call angels. For now, I'm just going to describe them as magnificent creatures. And we'll talk about them a little bit later as we go through the story that the Bible itself unfolds. Once he had done that, once he had created that dimension with these incredible creatures, incredibly populated, the depiction that we will read in the Bible is that there were myriads upon myriads of them, and that word myriad is an old Greek word meaning thousands, and when the Greeks said 1,000, they didn't mean literally 1,000, it could be a vast number. And then the Bible actually tells us that once God had done that, he then created this world that we live in, our material world, a world comprised of atoms and molecules. And with that, God was able to form galaxies. He was able to form what we call our cosmos. And so the cosmos had a beginning. Scientists call that the Big Bang, that moment of beginning from what scientists refer to as infinite density. And from that, it has expanded. It continues to expand, we know that. And eventually, a solar system around what we call our sun developed, and eventually a planet around that formed that we live on, and we call that Earth. It was almost a seemingly insignificant place. Carl Sagan called it the small thin blue dot. And it was at the time when light first reached our planet, what we call Earth, that this marked what we might say is the beginning of phase 1 of God's creation. Beginning phase 2 of the creation, God then set about creating atmosphere for our planet. That atmosphere was a gaseous composition that would soon become what we know as breathable air. But that took quite a while, and God was in no rush to do that. This included the establishing of the various states of water, and this water then developed a water cycle which God ensured was in place as well. This marked the end of phase 2 of God's creation. God then established, with now water and the atmosphere, the Earth's oceans and seas. And with that, there were river systems developed and dry lands. And so with the water cycle established, with oceans and seas and lakes and rivers now being formed and streams and so on, this allowed for God to create the very first life, microbial life. And with microbial life, then came vegetation. Of course, vegetation can't exist without that microbial life in the soil. And so with that, we see that once that was established, once microbial life was established, once vegetation, both on land, terrestrial and underwater, was established, God was able to create sea creatures. He created them from existing particles in the universe, and then this marked the end of what we might call phase 3 of God's creation. Then God established the earth's moon. This would have happened as a result of the certain early and late heavy bombardments on Earth, and some of the earth dust that was a part of that bombardment coalesced into what we refer to as our moon. And with the establishment of the moon and its gravitational force on Earth, Earth then went into a 24-hour day cycle. So the moon that orbits Earth, it also controls our rotation. And so 24-hour days were formed at this part of God's development of creation. And this marked the end of phase 4. So I hope you can see that there's a sequential reason for all of this, and one of the things I'm going to pose to you is that this kind of concords. It correlates to what we know from the scientific record as well. From this, then God created insects and bird life, and God caused the earth to actually teem with life. This marked the end of phase 5 of God's creation. God then began to create small and large-bodied animals, and this marked the beginning of phase 6. Phase 6 was now underway. And then, having done that, at just the right time, God created mankind. He created mankind unique. He created mankind as man and woman. And this marked the end of phase 6 of his creation. And with this, we've now gone through most of the opening chapter of the Bible. It's a great story, but you can see we have swept a panorama of much time, but this is what the Bible describes. So I guess as we consider this, the opening account in the Bible, I've got some questions for you to consider. How do these details of the origin story, the story that's in the Bible, correspond to or disagree with what we know from the fields of cosmology, the field of astronomy, geology, zoology and botany? Now, you might not be particularly well versed in those fields, but what do you know about them? And does what I've described, retold to you from the Bible's opening chapter, how does that correspond to what you know? Have a think about that, and in our next video, I'll be back with our next session in this series, the 8 greatest true stories in the Bible. I'd really appreciate it if you would click like on this video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit subscribe, and we'd love to have you come on this journey. And if you can let others know, and if you're sharing this on social media, please, if you're watching this, please like it as well, and we'd love for you to come over to the YouTube channel and subscribe as well.